I'm going to make a statement that will haunt you forever. The statement is this: money is simply a way to store energy. That's the thought that will haunt you for a while. Money, currency and bank accounts and credit cards and all those, anything that's money is a way to store energy. And that everything that we care about and need to do is about moving energy. Everything you build is focusing energy somewhere. Everything you move is energy. Everything you do requires energy. The world is energy that's being rearranged and moved and focused. That's what it is. Let us talk about the coming golden age. I'm going to call it a nuclear age. So I'm going to give you a new term. I believe we are entering the nuclear age. Now I know what you're saying. Oh, how can we be entering it? We've been in it forever. We've had nuclear power forever. And decades and decades. What do you mean we're entering it? Well, here's my argument. I'm going to start with a general concept. And the general concept looks like this. For a technology, it's often common that a technology would start off as not being useful, and then we would develop it until it became useful. So we would cross the line into being useful. But if you further develop it and you keep going, you might reach a point where you have another turning point where it doesn't become just useful, it actually transforms society. Let me give you an example. Telephones. Telephones started out, the day they were invented, there was nobody to call. What good was a telephone when only 100 people in the world had them? Not much good. But they kept improving, and more people got them. And then you started to have flip phones. You had a phone that didn't have a screen on it, but it was a little flip phone, and you could make a call anywhere. You could be anywhere and still make a call. Well, not anywhere. You had to be near a city, and you had to have coverage. But it was a pretty big deal. When we went from landlines to cell phones, that was a big change into the useful zone. Now, you could say we were useful with landlines, and it just got better and better with the flip phones. But then smartphones came along. Smartphones are not just a better telephone. It's a complete rearrangement of society, because now everything's an app. The things I used to call, I can do on an app. The fact that it has a screen and it can do so many functions, it's barely even a telephone. The thing I do least with my smartphone is make a phone call. That's the thing I do least. So phones went through a few stages where there were long phases where they were getting a little bit better. But then when they reached some turning point where it was like, changes everything. It's possible that when we get G5 everywhere, the faster speeds, that it might do this again. I mean, there might be a whole other level where you've got enhanced reality in your glasses and all kinds of stuff. Now, let's get to nuclear. Nuclear energy started, of course, the first day the first nuclear energy was designed in the first nuclear plant, let's call it Generation 1, whatever that was, wasn't that useful to the world. It had to get a lot better. Generation 2 was better. Generation 3. So we're sort of here on nuclear, except people will say, wait a minute, it's been decades and decades, and nuclear plants are, some of them are closing. It doesn't seem like we have any momentum. What's up with this? Well, the problem is that you couldn't iterate nuclear energy technology easily, because it was hard to build a nuclear plant and then see if it worked, and then, how can we improve this, and then build another one. But we are very close to an inflection point with nuclear energy. That would be the Generation 4 plants. I would say the Generation 3 and 4 are right around this corner. This is about where we are. So, what's going to happen when we have lots of small Generation 4, or maybe someday fusion, but we can just talk about more standard fission nuclear for now. I think we're approaching another point. What happens when nuclear energy is widespread And they figured out how to standardize the designs so that you could lower the cost and get approval more easily. Now keep in mind, shrinking them and standardizing the design fixes a lot of stuff. It fixes the economics, because you're always making the same nuclear plant. It fixes training, because it's the same plant, you're just reproducing it. And it makes it a lot easier to get approval, because the approval is the same as the last time. You don't have to look at a whole new plan. You say, it's the same as last time, so we'll just put another one in a new place. So there's a lot going on in terms of the ordinary engineering of nuclear. Now, let me give you another analogy. I worked at the phone company back in the days when it was landlines and the first cell phones were developed. And then I was also in the group within the phone company that was first developing the smaller cell phones, which became the flip phones and the little regular cell phones. During that time, one of the things that the engineers explained to me is that there was nothing stopping us from going where we were with landlines to a point where everybody had a phone in their pocket and could call anybody from anywhere. They told me it is purely an engineering problem, meaning there's nothing that needs to be, invented out of nothing. It's known engineering problems and iterating to find the best of them until you get something great. All of the engineers who worked in this field said, there's nothing that's going to stop this from happening. It's just time and iteration. Likewise, with nuclear energy, if you talk to the people in that field, they will tell you there is nothing that's going to stop this from happening. The slow improvement in nuclear is going to have an elbow, and it is going to go crazy. We don't know when. It could be in 10 years. It could be in 20 years. But the odds of it happening are more like 100%, unless, I suppose if aliens visit and bring us a new technology, energy source, could make a difference. Now, here's why this matters. I'm going to make a statement that will haunt you forever. The statement is this: money is simply a way to store energy. That's the thought that will haunt you for a while. Money, currency and bank accounts and credit cards and all those, anything that's money is a way to store energy. And that everything that we care about and need to do is about moving energy. Everything you build is focusing energy somewhere. Everything you move is energy. Everything you do requires energy. The world is energy that's being rearranged and moved and focused. That's what it is. If you think about that, then you understand that when we get to the elbow where energy becomes way, way cheaper, everything changes. We're not talking about small improvements. When you get to the point where we're putting, let's say, Generation 4 smaller nuclear online, and we're just cranking them out, boom, 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 as the cost of energy goes down, which is what would happen, you get all these transformative benefits that are not, here's my cat coming through. These are not incremental changes. Sorry about this. She's knocking the screen right now. You don't get incremental changes. Let me give you some examples. The reason that we don't like to grow food indoors is because you have to use a lot of energy. It takes energy to move the water there. It takes energy for the lights, and that's actually a lot of energy to artificially light it. You need energy for desalinization, depending on where you are. And if you were shipping food, you need energy for that. So growing food is sort of an energy problem. Not 100%, but very much an energy problem. If you have cheap energy, you have cheap food, you've got desalinization, you've got water everywhere, you've got heating and cooling is cheaper, so you don't have to worry about staying warm or staying cool. You've got irrigation, because that requires energy, and even construction. Every component that goes into building your house, from the bricks to the walls to everything, required a lot of energy expense to create it in the first place, to dig it out of the ground, to manufacture it, to create it, to ship it to your place, to put it into the construction. All energy. You take energy out of the equation, or you take it down from what it costs now to 10% of what it costs now, let's say in best case scenario, suddenly you don't just have a slightly better gas bill or energy bill. I'm not talking about, hey, my electrical costs went down, or hey, isn't it great that some extra people in a third world country got electricity? It's way bigger than that. That we're talking about making it basically cheap enough for somebody who doesn't have a job in one state to simply get in a self-driving car and drive to the other part of the country fairly cheaply, because the energy costs would be approaching zero. So here's the big picture. In the future, it will be impossible to simply tax our way to a fair and just society, because there won't be enough people making money to tax them so heavily that you wouldn't crush capitalism in the service of trying to provide for the poor. So taxation under the current set of variables can't get us there. But if you can reduce substantially the cost of a good quality life, such that instead of costing $100,000 a year to have a family of four in a suburban area, maybe it costs, and even that's low, but maybe it costs 50, maybe it costs 25. You should be able to get the cost of a good life way, way down simply by starting with energy. So I propose that we are entering a golden age in which nuclear energy will drastically reduce the cost of most of what we do, so that most of what we do completely transforms into a far better world. So that's the thought. Money is just a way to temporarily store energy that can be released again when you give somebody else your money for them to do some work. So that's the situation. So here, consider, if you will, the people on both sides of the aisle, from AOC and Biden to Rick Perry and the energy group and the Trump administration. Pretty much everybody's on plan right now that iterating nuclear technology and getting serious about it is the way to go. It is the way to deal with climate change. It is the way to deal with our national debt. Because again, you'd be making things cheaper for people. You don't need to tax as much if everything becomes less expensive. So even things like healthcare become way more affordable if you don't have to pay so much for the other stuff. So nuclear energy could be the biggest transformative change in civilization in the coming few decades, and everybody's on board. I don't see anybody who's against it who's actually looked into it. So even the politicians are on the same side. So you're looking at a situation forming that is one of the most positive things that civilization has ever seen. And here's the fun part. There's almost nothing that can stop it from happening. Because remember, it's just engineering. We don't have to do much differently. Maybe the lawmakers need to make things a little easier and maybe get rid of some regulations, but it seems there's some will to do that. So there doesn't seem to be any problem to get from where we are to way less expensive energy and widely available, and completely transforming society because of it. It's going to happen. 10 years, maybe 20 years, but nothing's going to stop it. I think I will leave it on that high point.